Paul Zak is one of the most interesting neuroscientists working every day to find out what the heck the humans are doing. You may say, you may think, you may consciously claim that this works or doesn't work, or you like it or don't like it, but your brain knows different. So people lie, but the brain doesn't lie. So we do have lots of examples of high immersion ads that are not very likable. They're just weird, but they're kind of like you can't look away. You're like, what is this? And it's really compelling to your brain. So I think that's the key story for advertising. So someone
Okay.
challenged Ernest Hemingway to tell a story in only 6 words. And the 6 words he came up with were for sale, baby shoes, never used. And have that call to action or the branding moment at a peak immersion moment. So often we see, even in shorter ads, 30 seconds, a nice little narrative arc. And then when immersion's low at the end, now it says, hey, remember our stuff. You really want to have those branding moments at peak immersion moments. So have the logo when there's an emotional peak, have something else. Why have the call to action at the end? You can do it twice, you could do it 3 times, right?
How would you like strangers to remember you?
Well, I got the nickname Dr. Love, so that's pretty good.
Hello, fellows. Welcome to the next episode of Jagged with Just Ravi. Subscribe to my channel for conversations at the edge with thought leaders from the branding, marketing, and the business world. Conversations that ignite new ideas, ideas with rough and sharp edges. Hello, Paul. Great to have you on my show.
Thanks, Just Ravi.
Paul, if I requested you to tweet your profile on X, what would you say?
I would say Paul Zak is one of the most interesting neuroscientists working every day to find out what the heck the humans are doing.
And God will be pleased with you.
That's all I want.
Well, what a worthwhile pursuit, isn't it?
You've seen the humans. They're really odd species, right? So we really have to do a lot of research to understand why they're doing what they're doing because they can't tell us.
They can tell us, yeah. I mean, we are not able to figure out our own selves. I mean, our entire life. I mean, even one lifetime is not enough. Okay. So first of all, we use this word, Paul, very loosely in language and professional terms. Emotion. I'm going to do some consumer emotions, or let me just immerse in this, literally speaking. So when you say neurological emotion, what does it really mean? And why is it being said that this can fundamentally alter our understanding of the species?
So, a little bit of backstory. Post 9/11, a lot of money went into the Department of Defense, including millions of dollars. Eventually, that went to my lab, and we were tasked with helping create a new superpower for soldiers called persuasion. Could we use words rather than weapons to motivate our allies and maybe our enemies to cooperate with the US goals? So, in doing all this research on the neuroscience of persuasion, we almost incidentally identified how the brain values experiences. So, as you know, at least intuitively, the brain's a very lazy organ. It's so energy hungry, it just wants to idle. And this manifests as habits. So, if I'm going to influence your behavior, then I've got to somehow communicate something to you in a way that says, this is so important to you that you should invest the metabolic resources to really understand and act on what I'm telling you. So, once we found this um, social value or social emotional value network, we had to give it a name. So for me, it's a data stream, but I call it immersion. Immersion kind of captures that notion in which you've sucked me into this experience and I'm really excited about it neurologically. So as you said, just Ravi, once we have this ability to measure neurologic immersion, then we can ask questions about what really creates value for us, for other people, what our organization creates value for our customers.
Right. Sometimes I feel most progress human beings have made is because of wars. Yeah, it's amazing. I'd like to know how they use that information and how they persuade it, but okay, that's another topic. So, how do you measure this? How do you measure, like you said, there is real time data. Um, yeah, in simple terms, what is the process? Yeah.
Right. So 20 years ago, when we started doing this, we did blood draws before and after, look at changes in neurochemicals. So I did about 10,000 blood draws in the last 20 years. That's a lot of poking at people's arms, right? And then eventually we use these $100,000 machines that allow us to collect data from the brain at the rate at which the brain works, which is about 1,000 times a second. And then when we started realizing, oh, this actually could be valuable to the entire world, we've got to get it out of the lab. Now we pull data from smartwatches and fitness wearables. So I'm just going to shock you, but it turns out your brain's connected to a body. And we very carefully mapped out what happens in the peripheral nervous system to map into this valuation network in the brain, immersion. And so, yeah, we can see these data now in real time by using parallel computing in the cloud to pull data from smartwatches.
Okay. Okay. So, moral molecule and oxytocin. What is this all about? Because on a side note, Paul, I was doing some work on humor, which is understanding the power of humor and laughter.
Mm.
And that's when I read that it releases a cocktail of hormones, and oxytocin was one of them. And the whole deal was that it should be used more because it's going to create that kind of trust between strangers, and we need more of it. So, what is this all? Because you've done so much work on it. How did you come across it, and what does it lay a foundation for going forward?
Right. So the kind of two core neurochemicals associated with this valuation network immersion are dopamine and oxytocin. So dopamine's about being present, and oxytocin is the emotional resonance um, of that experience. And so, yeah, as you know, 20 years ago, I was the first scientist to show the behavioral effects of oxytocin in a variety of ways. So one of the weird things that humans do is if we're in a movie theater, we laugh a lot more than if we watch a movie by ourselves, right? That's that social contagion effect. And so the question is, what signals that these humans are safe to be around? We're so social as human beings, right? We like to get together and be around other humans. Even thinking during the pandemic, I would walk my dog like 3 times a day. I was just dying to get out of my house. People would cross the street to come talk to me, pet my dog, and it's like I need human contact.
Yeah.
And people with dogs are safe people. We know that. Yeah. So 20 years ago, we are asking this question like, why would you ever interact with a stranger who, could hurt you or, be scary? And in animals, oxytocin is this core signal that another creature appears to be safe. And what we showed in humans is that we have many more receptors for oxytocin. We're super sensitive to social information, and that oxytocin signal motivates us to interact with the other humans. So, one takeaway for work is for human beings, it's not at all unnatural to put a bunch of strangers in a building and have them work on projects together. Like, that's what we do. We congregate, we like to work together. It's the most natural thing ever. And if we can create this oxytocin rich environment, then we'll reduce the frictions that humans beings will have with each other occasionally. It's like a kind of a lubricant. We trust each other, we'll work to help other people even if we don't get any reward ourselves. That's amazing.
I mean, it's almost like we're getting somewhere, in understanding ourselves.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by the good behavior of humans. I think the bad behavior we notice because it's so weird and it's honestly easy to study things like fear in the lab. But why are we ever nice to each other? Like, that's the question I spent most of my career trying to understand. And then that moves right into, well, if we're nice to each other, how do we create amazing environments where that niceness, that good behavior can flourish?
So, niceness and a degree or two higher, extraordinary experiences. So, uh, what is the formula? You must have it, Paul.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm a super practical person, right? So once we create this knowledge and this technology, we want to ask, well, what's it useful for? So we really live today in the experience economy, right? We want to have great experiences. I don't want to just buy a glass of water because it slakes my thirst, but I'd really like to have wonderful water, bubbly, have a nice person serving it to me. And so, even though we know that, many times the experiences we have at business, at school, kind of fails. And so, once we have this measurement technology for immersion, the next question is, how do I create extraordinary experiences, peak immersion experiences? Here's a really interesting aspect of this immersion social evaluation network. Not only does it say this is really valuable, it creates a craving to repeat the experience. So, on the business side, this means higher customer lifetime value. Peak immersion experiences create raving fans for your business, your organization. They also, in corporate training and in schools, increase uh, the acquisition of knowledge. People actually learn more if I can create peak immersion experiences. And so I think having that knowledge, which we all want to have great experiences, but having an objective measurement tool really moves us forward. So now we can run little mini experiments. So a concrete example, just Ravi,
Hmm.
um, a so creative software platforms. Anyone can do this. You don't have to talk to a weirdo like me. So, a high end restaurant chain in North America wanted to create amazing experiences. This is, $200 lunch. I mean, this is expensive. And so they started using our technology to measure those experiences during your meals. And they've just learned so many interesting things, right? Great experience. And then it really trailed off at the end. What they found was they were not sending customers out with an amazing, hey, you just spent $200. Here's a little gift for you. Can we take a photo of you? All these things that can accentuate that experience. You just kind of like once they serve the meal, you're on your own, but it's that social component that we almost always see adds more immersion to an experience, right? A great server really enhances your meal.
Yeah. And that's the peak end moment that you will define the entire experience with in your memory. And that kind of demystifies, the rock stars appeal, Paul. Oh, they're just giving an immersive experience. That's why people keep worshiping them, craving them. Oh,
Right.
it's just that.
And also, you see this 80-20 rule everywhere, right? Where 20% of the customer facing employees create 80% of the value for the organization, the sales or whatever. Well, why is that? What are those people doing? Are they just special in some way? I think it's they have special skills. They're probably much more sensitive to social information, but they're also people. Like you, I travel a lot. And when you see that flight attendant they just love their job. They're not tired. They're just like, ugh. They're like, hey, nice to see you, Mr. Zach. It's so pleasant to be, like I fly a lot, so they know me. And they're like, oh, would you like a, glass of champagne before your flight? Oh, no, no, no. Like they really want to be there. And then you feel like, okay, well, this is a great experience for me. This is not just like riding the bus. This is actually nice.
Yeah, and being a good human being pays.
For sure. Oh, that's so true, right? It reciprocates. And now I'm nicer to that flight attendant and I have loyalty for the airline. So yeah, for sure.
Okay, so all those people who say I'm a very people's person, I mean, that's something special, like the brain is more evolved.
So we do find that individuals like you who are more agreeable and more empathic are just more immersed in every experience. They're more sensitive to that social emotional information. And guess what? They're nicer to be around, they have more friends, and they live longer. So
Yay!
why don't we evolve ourselves to be better social creatures and live happier, longer lives, right?
Such a lot of research has happened around it that isolation and the other end of the spectrum is having a community that cares, especially in
Right.
old age. That makes all the difference. So awesome.
So
Hmm.
yeah, what we've done with our emotional fitness app is allow you to build friend groups. So then
Mm.
I can see, let's suppose I'm in your friend group and I don't see your data, but I just see red, yellow, or green. I'm like, oh, just Robbie's in the red zone. She needs a little extra love, little extra, like I send you a thumbs up or a heart emoji. Think how good you would feel, if someone goes, oh, I care about you. Like you're important. Like, that's all we really need. And for people who particularly face mood disorders where you're kind of trending down, just that little boost from someone that cares about you is enough sometimes to keep you more healthy emotionally.
Now, there's something slightly tangential I want to inquire about, Paul.
Sure.
So, these days, they hold all of these laughter clubs, and in yoga, they have incorporated, the Indian exercise daily routines. In that regime, they say just smile, just laugh, and you will feel better. You will actually feel better even if you're doing it mechanically. So what does really happen? Because there is no stimulus, it's just a decision that, okay, I'm going to do that. Like you said, okay, somebody's feeling low and you want to help. There's no stimulus that made you feel good or more immersed, etc. And the brain responds. The brain uh, gives the notification that, yeah, life is good, it's a good day. What
Right.
really happens?
So this is another aspect of the lazy brain is there's again two-way communication between the brain and the rest of the body. So normally when you're happy, you smile or laugh. But the reverse will happen. If you smile, then you activate the network that says, "Oh, I must be happy." Right? Which is really weird. So here's an example. I'm not going to have you do this because you're sitting at a desk, but for listeners, take your right leg and just do a clockwise circle with it. Right leg, clockwise circle. Maybe you can do it. And
Yeah,
then draw a big six with your right hand in the air. And if you do that, did you do it? What happened to your leg going in the clockwise
it
direction?
started moving in the
Yeah,
same.
your leg reverses direction,
Yeah,
right? So why is that? Because we've set up this pathway in the brain that says right hand moves, right leg moves the same direction. Now you can train yourself not to do that like dancers, but that's a tight linkage in the brain and it really wants to do that thing. If my foot's moving clockwise, I want my arm to move clockwise too. So I have to coordinate them. That's the same reason why if I force myself to smile, I actually feel better. So I'll do this if I'm in heavy turbulence on an airplane. I'll just force myself to smile. The people next to me think I'm an insane person. Kind of like, hey, this is like a roller coaster. I should enjoy this. So why am I stressed out? Because the plane's bouncing around.
yeah.
And, I've been on a million plane rides and the plane's never crashed. So it's fine. Um,
It
you know, uh,
works. There
it
is
works
a
actually. Yeah.
correlation. Amazing. Okay, it's going
And
another.
also share it with other people. So I've been on some, we're talking about airplanes, tripping on airplanes, and people next to me do look stressed out. And I've actually held hands with people. I'm like, it's going to be fine. Hold my hand. You're going to be okay. And actually, I feel better because now I'm helping somebody else. And so it's that social component. Here's something I started doing, just Ravi, I don't know, 10 years ago as an experiment. I started saying hello to people in elevators. At least in the US, it's a weird thing where people do not want to make eye contact. You're in a box for
Yeah.
20 seconds. You can say hello to that other human. They're aware that you're there. So what happens is half the people freak out, which kind of makes me happy for some reason. The other half, I have this nice 20-second conversation. Hey, how are you? You're in a hotel or a conference room. Where are you coming from and whatever. And people smile. Why don't we just say hi? It's not that hard. And I'm an introvert, by the way. I would not talk normally, but I just like love these running these little experiments on the humans.
Amazing, amazing, very inspiring, in every metro it's the same case. And I do this if I see kids around or a pet, then
Mhm.
I have a conversation with them, because and then indirectly, because they answer for the child or the pet, and like so that maybe I'm more sensitive to somebody freaking out.
Don't you? No, I think children and pets are honestly much more interesting than most adults. So when I'm with you, I'll talk to the child or the pet.
Lovely. Our audience should try this. We can make our cities uh, more connected, more happy. Okay. So now, and we'll come back to this topic when we look at the Tuesday app. Right
Mhm.
now, we are going to a topic that might not be a very happy topic for somebody who's been in advertising, but immersion data and advertising. So, there are lots of myths you busted, And I also heard the BBDO story, and how you took up a special case and made a point. So, um, what is the lesson for advertisers here? Uh, how do you think the advertising system should change in the future in terms of testing?
So, by most accounts, about 90% of advertising has no effect on sales. So, my least favorite word in advertising is the word liking, right? People really like our ad. I don't care. I'm practical. I just want to help you communicate in the most effective way possible, like we did with soldiers, so that people can make rational choices. So, in my book, which is called Immersion, there's a whole chapter on the ethics of persuasion. As long as I'm not coercing you, as long as you can say no, you have a chance to think about it. If I'm going to communicate to you, I might as well do it as well as possible. And so, we've created a platform that advertisers and marketers use to test the neurologic immersion of their ads before they release them in the wild. So we worked with a very well-known ad agency. I won't tell you the name, but it's been around for almost 100 years. And they told me that when they release ads on the internet, they put out 100 versions of it and see which ones get clicks. That to me means you have no idea what you're doing. Like you just have no clue. So why not make, I don't know, 4 versions, send those to people by email, pull data from their smartwatches with our app and go, oh, blah, blah, blah. At the branding moment or the call to action, immersion's really low. So we should edit that ad so that you're really emotionally engaged when it says, hey, buy our stuff or whatever that is. So again, you can say no, and the ad's got to be relevant for the individual, for the brain to really invest enough processing in that. So my kids are young adults now. If I see a diaper for commercials with babies with big eyes, I might enjoy it. Not relevant. My brain will just flush it out pretty quickly. But if you give me an ad for, I don't know, uh, service for my car, well, that's relevant to me. Okay, so that's going to be more meaningful if you can communicate in an effective way that breaks through all that background noise of my brain just keeping me upright, breathing, and conscious. And so I think by having a really efficient, rapid test bed, we can get better communications. People can still say no. There's no brainwashing here.
So, the ads that are immersive create an impact, and that can have a link with a call to action, a real call to action, which could be sales.
Correct. So when we did this research funded by the Department of Defense and other agencies, under contract, we had to accurately and consistently predict people's actions, not their feelings or liking or intentions. So we always anchored our analysis into which networks in the brains are active to predict what you're going to do. So as you know, Chester, in recent published research in scientific journals, we've shown we can predict hit songs and sales bumps in the high 90% accuracy, like really, really accurate now because the can I use one bad word? Or would you rather I not?
Yeah, you can. Yes,
Okay, I'm gonna use
I
one sort of
trust
bad
you.
word. One of our early subscribers called immersion the give a shit measure.
Mm.
Basically, your brain just doesn't want to spend the processing power. You've got to get me to care about this kind of thing, right? So, if I'm going to communicate you, may not be relevant, you may not care about it, but at least you can do it in an effective way that pulls in that emotional component that says, "Oh, this is important."
So, so typically, when you do a concept test in qualitative research, and I'm not going to pre-test, where you do it with a storyboard, and and I'm not even getting into the NLP testing, where they're going to look at the brain waves as well, and like you said, the waves that still might be very primitive, but liking is has been a very important factor, because if you've disliked, I mean, so far, so if you disliked it, I mean, it's like a major correction has to happen, because if you've not liked it, you're not going to process it, you're going to shut it off. That has been the conventional understanding.
Mhm.
So now we say that liking is immaterial, that maybe vanity metric.
Metric, right?
Yeah.
What I
So,
wanna know is, did this shake your brain up so much that you can't forget it? So we do have lots of examples of high immersion ads that are not very likable. They're just weird, but they're kind of like you can't look away. You're like, "What is this?" And it's really compelling to your brain. So I think that's the key story for advertising.
right. Could you take some examples of ads that initially, maybe there was no like, but then they got talked about a lot because they were producing results, and then an understanding happened? Yeah.
Yes. So there's when we started doing this, I always put my scientist hat on. I don't want to be full of BS. I really want to make sure I know what I'm doing, particularly people giving me money. And so we, for many years, tested the immersion in Super Bowl commercials. We did this live in a bar. So because we have wearables, right, I can collect data anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a quiet lab space. And so what we found consistently is that the um, ad um, there's a thing called the ad measure. So it's USA Today is a U.S. newspaper. People rate thousands of thousands of people rate these ads for liking. So we compared the liking measure to the immersion measure, and we found a zero correlation between liking and immersion year after year after year. So much so that we just stopped doing it because it was the same result every year. And yet, some of the highest immersion ads were the least liked. For example, in the 2018 Super Bowl, people can Google this later. There's an ad for a new flavored Diet Coke called Diet Coke Twisted Mango, with this woman being filmed behind a yellow wall. It's very asymmetric. She's super tall. She has weird clothes on. She's trying to dance in a weird way. And it's like, this is a train wreck, but the brain loves it. And uh, when Diet Coke uh, in 2018 released these flavored Diet Cokes, it's the first time in 2 years that they had actually a sales bump in Diet Coke. So, of course, they had a new product, but also they had advertising around that new product.
Mm.
So, again, I just want to make sure that we're moving behavior and not moving self-reported liking. The complication with our brains is that we have this, I call it the Freudian hangover. From this weirdo Freud, we think if I just poke you the right way, I can make the unconscious conscious. You can't. The brain doesn't work that way, right? Most of what's happening is unconscious, and then we try to tell a story consciously about why I did something. But we have technology that lets us tap into that unconscious network now, and that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah, when you said unconscious and conscious connection, it seemed like, like there was a junction and intersection, and there was fluid exchange happening. Yeah. So when you talk about uh, unconscious data can be tracked, what did you mean by that?
Right. This signals we're getting are deep in the brainstem, the very old parts of the brain, and they're just not open to conscious awareness. And certainly that we're not open to conscious awareness second by second. So, if I say, well, how much do you like this pen? I mean, compared to what? Compared to my kids? Compared to my dog? I mean, it's just not. But our brain, because it's so energy hungry, is always doing these valuation comparisons because it needs to save energy, or it's evolved to save energy. And
Mm.
so once we see this big metabolic investment that is immersion, the brain's like, oh, holy crap, I love this thing. Give me more of this. So that's, I think, the key insight. And to be able to do that from smartwatches, took me 20 years. I work slow.
Oh, yeah, and it just alters the way we do everything. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, you should have done it faster. Okay, so the creative department in advertising agency, they always have looked at research with slight bit of disdain because research is just going to kill our ideas. I mean, what will research know? And the methods are not so pristine that they always correct. And this creativity, when it's finally in its final form, the audience will get it, or things like that. So I just wanted to understand that is there any link of how creative, and of course, I don't know how to define or put it as a statement, but the ad that you talked about, something weird happening. Um, in a way, it could be said that it was creative because it was not something linear, it was not something expected, predictable. It was like, something out of the box. I mean, to use a cliche. So, is there any emotion and creativity link that brain kind of takes notice when something unpredictable is happening? There is a twist with some familiarity or something like that?
Great question. Great neuroscience question. So the brain loves the new thing. So part of this immersion network, this dopamine system, strongly activates when I see something that is new or unusual or surprising. And so what we found is you've got about 15 seconds to capture that attentional response and then subsequently can build up the emotional value of that experience. So the first thing is to really open hot, do something unusual, do something different. Think of this, I'm sure you give a lot of public talks, Just Revi, like I do. What I do is I run on stage. First of all, I'm excited because I'm talking to a big group of people. And all of a sudden they're like, what the hell's going on? So first of all, that burns off some energy for me, so I'm not so hyper. And then I want to put energy in the room. Like, okay, this is happening, guys. This is going to be great. I don't want to walk on stage like a boring person. I'm going to run, right? So that's my little open hot. But I think for ads, it's the same way. If you open hot, something weird, something unusual, people go, okay, this is not normal. What's happening? You get that attentional response, but now I've got to build in story structure. So as you know from the work I've done, once I get your attention, I've got to really build a narrative arc where I'm increasing the emotional tension of that story that I'm telling. What we found is that this sort of old fashioned, this was kind of common in the 90s, is quick cuts, no story, just moving stuff around. That doesn't work. That just modulates that attentional response. But after a while, you're like, it's just boring because I don't know, there's no story here. It's that narrative arc that is the most effective way to sustain immersion and therefore to influence behavior.
Mhm. And I don't know. That's how the brain process. Like you said, the brain is lazy. It's trying to conserve energy. So when there is a narrative, it is going to process it faster. And if there's no narrative, it will have to build one.
Yeah,
It,
it'll just stop. It'll just go, "Oh, this is not
it will
set
reject
up in a
it.
way that's interesting to me." So again, as gregariously social creatures, we are obsessed with what the other humans are doing. There's no shortage of movies, no shortage of novels. We keep spinning these out because we think we learn something. Even in a fictional story, we may learn something useful.
Yeah.
It's also enjoyable, right? So if your ad can capture your attention, something unusual, something different, and now build a narrative around it, that's effective. So we've even seen people use our platform, like politicians, to do these 6-second bumper ads, and you can tell a story in 6 seconds, right? There's a real narrative arc. So
Tell
someone
yeah.
challenged Ernest Hemingway to tell a story in only 6 words, and the 6 words he came up with were for sale, baby shoes, never used. That's
Uh,
a story. That's poignant. 6 words.
and
So
there's a
for
clear
creators who are
emotion.
listening, yeah, it grabs you, just grabs you. I'm kind of
Tragic.
tearing up a little bit. I have
Yeah.
kids. It's breaking my heart. That's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
So I think you don't have to be brilliant to do this. You just have to sort of think about how do I induce that emotional response so that people really care about the thing you're communicating.
So emotion and call to action. And so there can be a 3 hour movie which is trying to immerse you.
Hmm.
There can be, like you said, this 6 words can immerse you, right?
Right?
They can immerse you, right?
For
So
sure.
is there an optimal time? Because like you said, so ads are getting smaller and smaller. The thumb stoppers are like really 6 8 seconds. And this whole debate about we should get a minute to communicate, because how do you tell a proper story? Even Google and Facebook want to tell 1 minute long stories. And so all this is going on, but 6 words can do it. So is there a time correlation with emotion, effectiveness, and call to action?
What a great question again. So one of the companies you just mentioned that makes most of their money from advertising, a senior vice president recently asked me if you could create an immersive ad in 1 second. And my answer was no. 1 second, that's just attention. I can't get enough emotion. 6 seconds works, What we have found, I've now seen immersion data for thousands of ads. Sadly, think of my life looking at those ads all day, every day. And what we found is almost always shorter is better. Make the case, get to the point, and have that call to action or the branding moment at a peak immersion moment. So often we see, even in shorter ads, 30 seconds, a nice little narrative arc. And then when immersion's low at the end, now it says, hey, remember our stuff. You really want to have those branding moments at peak immersion moments. So have the logo when there's an emotional peak, have something else. Why have the call to action at the end? You can do it twice, you could do it three times, right? Or have that branding in there. So I think this is upending that sort of normal structure. Here's a concrete example. A number of the movie studios use our technology to create movie trailers, which are generally between 2 and 3 minutes, theatrical trailers. If you look at those, and people can look later online, they tell half of a narrative arc. They put characters, they introduce characters, they put them in some weird environment, and then they create a crisis, and those characters have to begin to resolve that crisis, and they stop at the crisis point. And now they say, buy a ticket to find out what happens. Now, that's a smart advertising approach, right? Find out what happens by buying the ticket. So I think advertisers should think more about that. We're not
Mm.
gonna tell you how the story ends. We're not gonna tell you why the toilet paper is the best in the world or I don't know, donuts are wonderful. Let me
Yeah,
wonder. Make me go in.
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Tease me a little bit.
Yeah. And would you say that that is the construct of a thriller as well? There's a death,
Yes.
something has happened, you
And you
know,
have some suspects who look like they
characters
did it and they're
run a
just a red
scene. Yeah.
herring. Yeah, I love that. Let's make advertisers advertising more like thrillers. Oh, brilliant.
And series, like episodes. Sometimes they also try and do that, like leave it at a cliffhanger so you watch the next episode. I mean, that's, I guess, the secret to binging, perhaps, apart from
Well,
Netflix.
it's
Great algorithms.
I agree, but it's still hard. So one of the major US TV networks uses our technology to look at new fall shows for linear TV. And they know that people will switch off, change channels after a commercial. And before they started using our technology, they were only right at creating an emotional hook before a commercial break at 40% of the time. Even though everyone knows these are professional directors and editors, and they all know it's got to be a hook, but they can't do it without measuring, in my view. I'd rather get to 80 or 90%, but 40, maybe that's okay.
Mm.
It's hard. So,
Mm.
for creators who are listening, it's a hard job because there's a philosophical dilemma, which is if it works for me, the creator, well, gosh, it's got to work for everybody else. But you're not normal. You're a creative specialist. You're doing this as for a living all the time. So, what, if I may, one more quick story. I was doing a demo at one of the big movie studios, a bunch of executives. This is a Friday afternoon. And I could tell people do not want to be there. Their boss made them show up in this meeting. So I pulled up one of this company's movie trailers, a movie that had just been released, and I brought some wearables. I'm like, we're going to measure your movie trailer live now and find out if it's good or bad right now, second by second. Like, call my bluff, right? I'm in the no BS world. So played the movie trailer, hooked him up, and before I started, one guy who didn't want to be there, he was just cranky, said, well, I produced that trailer and I've seen 100 versions of it and I'm so sick of it. I hate it. It's not going to work for me. I'm like, all right, great. So after we measured it, 3 minutes, I said, what color band? Oh, you have a black band. Great. Let's pull your data up first. His data was the most immersed of the entire group. Why? It was his baby. He loved it. It was most relevant to him, right? It was so you may say, you may think, you may consciously claim that this works or doesn't work, or you like it or don't like it, but your brain knows different. So people lie, but the brain doesn't lie.
Mm. And you will always be engaged if it's your baby.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And we find this actually with repeat viewing, and this is one of the issues in advertising. Like, how often should I show this? If it's a great story, if it's a great communication, we do not see a degradation in immersion over time. You can watch it 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Um, One of the best ads we've measured, again, people can Google it later, is an ad created by BBDO for Guinness beer. And the ad is called Empty Chair. it almost maxed out the scale. I have played that ad in talks hundreds of times. I will still tear up when I see it. It's so beautiful. It's so perfect. Not only is the story beautiful, but it has what I call product story congruence. The ad, in this case, Guinness beer, is built into very naturally into this beautiful 1 minute narrative. And it's so poignant and it's so aspirational and it's just beautifully filmed. It's as perfect an ad pretty much as we've seen neurologically. So Guinness Empty Chair, you can watch it later and you'll see how it just hangs together. The whole thing really hangs together.
Hmm. And there's a universal emotion, I guess, that it connects everywhere. Okay, we look at the ad.
Yeah.
Mm.
The choices we make reveal the true nature of our character.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that universal emotion, by the way, is love. I
Yeah.
think that ad ultimately is about love. And I think ads that we see that really move markets are about love in some sense.
Isn't that something amazing? You're so human. Oh my God.
I know. I'm actually a Martian. I'm just faking it for you.
Uh, we like Martians. Oh my God.
I know. It's the Martians who want to observe
They
the
take
humans and
it so
understand what
well.
they're doing.
They're not so different. Oh my God. What a finding. This is something. Okay. Now, I think we will talk about the app. Please tell us something about the Tuesday app. It's a well-being app. Did you actually make it for well-being, or did it become how?
We did. So really the arc of my professional life has been creating new knowledge and technology so people can live longer, happier lives. And so even though for our company, Immersion, we started with advertising and corporate meetings and training, the goal always was to release a consumer facing app to increase what I call emotional fitness. So I don't like wellness because that sounds like either well or unwell, but fitness, just like physical fitness can be built, emotional fitness can be built. So yeah, last July we released version 1 of our emotional fitness app called Tuesday. It's free. You can get it at besttuesdayever.com. And it gives you goals every day to have enough social emotional interactions to maintain emotional health. It's all based on published research from my lab and other labs. And it allows you to share that information with others as well. So for your teenager or your elderly parents who may not be able to articulate or not want to articulate how they're doing emotionally, it gives you a way to ensure that you yourself and the people around you are getting enough of that social interaction to be healthy. Now, the good news is the brain is very promiscuous in how it gets social emotional value. Um, this is good. I'm getting a lot of value right now talking to you, just Ravi. I can play with my dog. I can watch a movie. The brain doesn't really care. Now, in person, of course, is best, and in person with someone you really care about or love, of course, will give you the most immersion. But just having that ring to close, like you do with steps, I think is a great advance. In addition, we've shown that we can predict when people are having pre-depressive symptoms at least 2 days in advance, and I think eventually we'll be able to do that weeks in advance. So here's your data up and down, and then all of a sudden it starts to trend downward. Well, that's a time when we need someone to call us, one of our friends, our family members, for people who are vulnerable to mood disorders. Share this data with your clinician and have that doctor's office call in. Hey, I'm calling from Dr. Smith's office. Looks like you may not be doing so well. Just want to check in on you. And that alone can keep people out of going to this deep depressive hole. And I think that's when medical treatment is more effective, it costs less, and we're reducing suffering in the planet. And the app will link to your calendar, so you'll actually see every day those times that give you the most pleasure neurologically. And it also prompts you when you have a big peak or a big trough to go, hey, what were you doing? Right after it happens. Not while it's happening. We don't want to interrupt you. Hey, you had a big, these troughs I call frustration moments. You were really frustrating. What was going on? So that you begin to make the unconscious conscious. You begin to learn more about your own self and your own preferences. And by the way, you can then curate your life for better happiness. Just, lean into the stuff that gives you pleasure and the stuff that doesn't, or the people that don't, get away from them.
Wow, wow. Like figuring out what you want to do. I'm saying if you do it for a teenager, uh,
Yeah. So yeah, try things out. I think,
passions and hobbies and
right. Or even jobs. I have an appointment at a medical school in Denmark, so I go there for a month every other year. And in Denmark, they have this program where you have the option, you don't have to, but between high school and college, the kids will spend a year basically volunteering 1 month at doing a different job. So they can basically try out different jobs.
yeah.
Imagine if you had the Tuesday app and you just quantified, hey, in January I did this thing, it wasn't so great. And then in February I did this thing, oh, that was really good. You learn so much about yourself. Again, we have some intuition, but to sort of quantify that objectively would be really great.
Yeah, you don't need anybody else's validation.
Right.
And so you've done great, Paul.
Thank you.
I mean, despite being a Martian for the human society, and God is really happy with you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Don't
Yes.
shoot me.
Okay, mother's best advice.
Press your shirts.
Alternate profession could have been.
Oh, I want to be a landscape architect.
Okay, what would you do on Mars for fun? He stays there. Okay, never mind.
Get back to Earth.
Okay. As per your partner, your most often used phrase.
How about I love you?
No, he made that up. I should have shot him. Okay.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, I faked it.
Okay, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Relax. Don't be so hard on yourself.
What is your favorite childhood memory?
Building computers with my engineer dad.
Oh, wow. If you were to devote the rest of your life to philanthropy, what cause would you choose?
Oh, emotional fitness for sure.
You're already at it. What is your greatest joy?
My children.
Hmm. How would you like strangers to remember you?
Well, I got the nickname Dr. Love, so that's pretty good.
What is one missed opportunity that you wish you could have a second chance at?
Well, there was this girl. No. Yeah, maybe relationships.
Okay, I have my doubts, huh? What book you'd like to gift to all your friends cannot be your own.
I love The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley. It's the most uh, kind of joy-inducing book about how great the world is today versus any other time.
What's your jagged edge?
I am absolutely the most stubborn person you ever met. It's called persistence when it's a nice thing, but basically, I'm very, very stubborn. My poor wife has to put up with me.
Okay, it's a wrap up. Paul, I'll request you to share your online addresses, emails, and also about your book. It will all be in the show notes as well. But what would you like to tell about your book and how can people reach you?
Thank you so much. You can find me at getimmersion.com, immersion with an I. The book is called Immersion, The Science of the Extraordinary and the Source of Happiness, available online everywhere. And yeah, and the app is free. It's called Best Tuesday Ever. best2zaver.com, and you can find it there. And we're building version 2 now. That'll be even better. What a pleasure to be on here, Jashabi. It was so much fun. You have no idea how much I enjoyed this.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you, Dr. Love, for making this unique contribution and much needed contribution to the planet Earth. And maybe you'd consider moving here.
Full time. Yeah, I'll just instead of visiting, I'll stay full time. Jashabi,
Yeah.
you're wonderful. Thank you so much. What a
Thank
pleasure.